that it's got more water to solute, and therefore it's easy for the water to pass through the small intestine and help you hydrate and things. If it's hypertonic, then it has more solute, and if it's high enough, it's going to actually drag water out of the tissues into the small intestine, okay? So we have to be aware of making sure that we check, if we're going to use these sport drinks, make sure that you check the level of carbohydrate and solutes in the drink. The World Health Organization says should be somewhere between 6 to 10%, not more than 10. I've seen other resources that say at 10% that's pretty hypertonic and you might be dragging water out of the cells, so I think maybe trial and error as with everything, unfortunately. And so this osmolality, when we're looking at this ratio, the key is the number of particles, not how much carbohydrate there is, right? It's not the size of the carbohydrate molecule, it's the number of molecules. What that means is that some drinks will use larger carbohydrate molecules with the idea that the larger molecule doesn't change it being hypotonic, but the larger molecule will deliver more carbohydrate to the working muscle. Okay, so you got to keep an eye on which type of carbohydrate. Are they using glucose? Are they using fructose? Are they using galactose? Fructose is metabolized differently to regular glucose, and there's some information out there that says that fructose can cause an inflammatory reaction in the capillaries and arteries. So there are some things that you need to weigh up and look into if you're going to use the drinks. Remember that we're looking at gastric emptying, the rate that it passes through to the small intestine. That's going to slow down if I'm doing very high intensity work. All right, so that means it becomes harder to stay hydrated the harder I'm working. Or if I'm already somewhat dehydrated, gastric emptying, you would think, would speed up to try to benefit that problem, but it doesn't. It slows down as well. So then you're going to add to the problem. All right? Oh, I've seen the slide. I don't know where my slides keep disappearing to. Okay. I wanted to just tell you a little bit about carbohydrate consumption after exercise. All right, so we have literature that indicates that we should try to take in carbohydrate, and actually as we look at the protein, we really want to mix carb and protein within a 2-hour window from the end of the exercise or the competition. All right, so when we look at the data, if we look at glycogen synthesis when someone eats within 2 hours versus not eating within 2 hours, okay, so this would be minutes of recovery, this would be glycogen synthesis. So if I eat within that 120 minutes, then we see much higher glycogen synthesis, okay? So that's really beneficial, particularly if you're in an event where you're going to play twice a day, or you've got to play the next day, or you're training in a really hard period of your training program, and you want to recover in time to train the following day, right? When we look at the 120 to 240, then we don't see much difference, right? If I eat and if I don't eat are pretty similar at that point. So the key is, can I get some carbohydrate in within that 2-hour window? As we mentioned on Wednesday, that might be a good reason to use a sport drink. If you're someone who does not feel hungry at the end of a training session, particularly during the summer when it's hot, but we know that taking in some carbs is going to benefit your recovery process, then maybe using a carbohydrate drink would be useful. Or, as I mentioned the other day, chocolate milk. There's a lot of research that supports the use of chocolate milk instead of a sport drink. It has carbohydrate, it has protein, it's got everything you need, and it's a quarter of the price, maybe less. Right? Now, you might have athletes who are lactose intolerant. I suspect, although I haven't seen a specific piece of research that looks at chocolate soy milk rather than chocolate regular milk, but I suspect, given the protein level, that chocolate soy milk would do the same trick, but I don't know for sure. And as I was saying on Wednesday to a couple who hung behind, here's the problem. The people who pay for the research on chocolate milk are who?
People who make it.
Right, the dairies. So we don't have funding to research chocolate soy milk because they don't want you drinking chocolate soy milk, they want to push chocolate milk, right? So you always have to be a little bit careful when you're reading the research. Think about who's funding this, what am I being told, why am I being told this, who's paying for it, right? You have to learn to be a little bit cynical when you're looking at nutrition research, all right? Electrolytes post-training, sodium has been shown to be beneficial, and it's particularly beneficial because without the sodium, you don't absorb the carbohydrate as efficiently. You would think potassium would be beneficial, but there's no research right now that really supports that. On the other hand, it's not going to do any damage. So magnesium, got to be a little bit careful with magnesium because for some people magnesium stimulates cramping. Not everybody, right? So again, it's a log. Keep a heart rate log, keep a nutrition log, keep a training log, and then correlate across the three about how you feel, how well the training session went. Okay. All right, so proteins. All right, so before we look at the nutrition aspect, go back to the beginning of the semester when we were looking at energy systems, all right? Do we use protein for energy? Not very often, right? Teeny tiny amount if I'm doing a very long endurance type event. Most of the time, we use protein as a building block, a mending tool, okay? So, I said yesterday I was going to have some more media args. Here's my next media arg. So this is a picture of mum trying to get the kids to school and cook herself breakfast at the same time. And so they are trying to sell her this protein drink to take instead of breakfast. All right? There's lots of things I don't like about that. The very first thing is, what does that say? Does it give us energy? Can it give us energy? And that's the problem with the advertising. It's not lying, but it's not telling the truth, right? And that's the problem, okay? Because that stuff is expensive. Way more expensive than a slice of wholemeal toast with some peanut butter on it. But they want her to buy this because it's quick and easy and she can drink it on the go instead of take the time to make a piece of toast. Right? You gotta be careful. Advertising is insidious. Right? Okay, so carbs, bless you. Carbs, remember, have 4 kilocalories per gram. So do proteins. So they don't even have more energy in them than a gram of carbohydrate. Okay? The American Dietetic Association suggests 10 to 35% of your total calorie intake. Again, please note, if you go to a different association, ACSM, CPC, this 35 is very high. It's usually 30, okay? They're trying to create a range that is usable for everyone, right? 35% of your diet as protein is high, and I might know, expensive, because protein is expensive, okay? So we're going to use our protein for protein synthesis, for making additional muscle fibers, depending upon the training program I'm doing. Right? I'm not the fiber, but I'm going to lay down more actin and myosin within a fiber so that that fiber is stronger. Okay? And we use it for repair and recovery, for skeletal tissue, for connective tissue. We use protein to make hormones. Right? We have lots of uses that are not energy focused. Okay. Now, here's the one RDA that I think you should pay attention to, because especially if we're a strength athlete or an endurance athlete, it can be very tempting to ramp up your protein intake. Okay. The recommended allowance for a regular person, not you, is 0.8 grams per kilogram of weight per day. Right? So you take your weight in kilos, you times it by 0.8, and that's how much protein is recommended per day. Okay? There's a lot of controversy over how much protein athletes need. Clearly they need more protein than a regular person. I mean, they're doing a lot more work, they're doing a lot more damage, even if they're not trying to actually grow muscle. They've got to fix the muscle they're wrecking every day training, right? So no one disagrees that athletes need more. The question is how much more, right? And so the range at the moment, depending upon your event, is anywhere from 1 gram per kilogram per day to 1.7. I've seen 1.8 grams per kilogram per day. Okay? So here's the kicker. The research does show that 2 grams per kilogram per day or more leads to some health risks. All right, it can damage your kidneys because your kidneys have to process all this additional protein that isn't getting used to fix things because there's too much of it, right? And so once we hit the 2 gram per kilogram per day limit, now we're looking at health issues, possibly. So if we go back to our 35%, for a small female endurance runner, right? If she's a marathon, a 10K, triathlete, and she's taking 30% of her weight in protein, or 30% of her calories in protein, she may be well over her 2 grams per kilogram per day. And then she's putting herself at risk further down the line. Is it worth it? Right? The problem with athletes is that at the time, pretty much anything is worth it if it gives them an edge. Right? We all have this kind of weird mentality where we think that down the road is down the road and there won't be any knock-on effects. There always are. Right? So we've got to be a little bit careful how we use this idea of protein, okay? Because it's not like carbohydrate, where the worst thing that happens if you eat too much carbohydrate is you put on some weight. Right? If you eat too much protein, you can permanently damage your kidneys. There's no coming back once they're damaged. Right? So that's another reason why I get really mad at this current protein hype that's going on, because there's no information. No one is telling anybody, well, but you should be measuring how much you're taking per day to make sure you're below the health risk. No one's saying that. Everyone's just pushing keto diets and all this nonsense. Right? So, high protein diets, most dietitians are not going to recommend them. We've got our kidney disease, but there's also some links with certain types of cancer. There's possible heart disease, probably linked to the fact that the additional calories make you put on weight and therefore that puts your heart at risk. People who promote and support high protein diets will argue that the results that are negative get skewed because high protein diets can be high fat diets. If I'm eating a lot of steak, if I'm eating a lot of oily fish, if I'm eating a lot of pork, right, then I'm also taking in additional fat calories. And so they argue that the fat calories skew the data, not the high protein. It is true that if you eat a high protein diet, human bodies are very adaptable. Whatever you feed it the most of, it will adapt to manage exercise as best it can. So if I give it lots and lots of protein over time, and it takes weeks, my body will start to use more protein for energy than it would normally. Does it use only protein for energy? No. It uses it a bit more than it did before, right? So you're still going to run into running out of energy because you haven't got enough carbohydrate in your diet, in my view, right? And for the first 3-4 weeks of this high protein diet, you're going to see a decline in performance because your body hasn't adapted to using the protein to make ATP aerobically, right? It could be that the timing of taking the protein is important. There's a lot of research going on in this area right now. If I'm doing a high protein, low carb diet and my carbs are really, really low, I have 100% calories. If I only have 15% carbohydrate, then the other 85% is fat and protein. There's all kinds of health risks, cardiovascular risks tied into that combination, right? So my personal view is Why would I do that? Why don't I just eat a balanced diet and work hard? Right? Why would I eat this crazy diet and put myself at risk of something else? You've got to be, again, I think, a world-class athlete to bother taking that risk or playing with your diet that much. The rest of us don't need to. Right? There's absolutely no reason. Yeah.
So how about like in a situation where like it's an emergency, like so the person's like extremely overweight and maybe they need to be on that diet so they can drop the weight really quick? Because I read up on something about that.
The problem is a calorie is a calorie.
Right.
So what they need is less calorie intake, more calorie output. So they need to go to the pool and swim, because they probably shouldn't, if they're that overweight, they probably shouldn't go walk at the trail. They can go to the pool and go swimming for half an hour. And they need to find a way to cut down the amount of calories. Eating protein won't make you lose weight faster if you eat a lot of protein. It's still, remember our seesaw? It's still calories on the calorie inside, right? So the other thing to remember, because it ties back to the low carb idea, remember that carbohydrate is stored with water. So initially when you go on these diets, you see fast results because you're not taking in so much carb and therefore you're not storing so much water. And water is heavy, right? I mean, anybody that carries around a litre jug of water every day will tell you it's heavy, right? So when I drop 8 pounds the first week, I didn't really drop 8 pounds. I'm not eating very much carbohydrate, I'm not storing very much carbohydrate, and so I lost probably 6-7 pounds of water.
I've noticed that I tried that one time and I actually started cramping a lot because the water is lost. It's kind of crazy.
And there's no scientific evidence to support these things, right? Use the ratios that the CDC or the ACSM or the ADA give you. Work out across a week what you eat. Make sure that your carbs are about 50%. Make sure your proteins are about 20%, depending on how much training and what kind of training you're doing. Make sure you've got healthy fats, which we'll get to. And just keep training. I mean, that's all you need to do. All you need to do. The problem is people don't want that. They want a quick fix, right? And they think that these diets that get plastered across billboards or, you know, advertising in Walmart, or they read an article from someone who looks gorgeous who says, I did this. Go, oh, well, I can do that. Right? Daft. Daft. Oh, here's my next bit. Mr. Olympia Phil Heath. I don't know who he is, but he's huge, as you can see, which probably means there were some growth hormones or steroids going into that training program. Because I've worked in a bodybuilding gym, I know what they get up to, right? So he says his mantra, where does it say? He believes anyone who goes to the gym to feel and look better is a bodybuilder of sorts. His mantra is less carbs, more protein. If you eat more protein, you lose weight and look awesome automatically. That is the biggest load of tosh I've ever heard in my life. Right? Here's the problem. This is what the regular population read, and so they believe it. And then you're going to go out there as the movement physiologist expert and go, you don't need to do that. And they'll go, well, but he said. Of course you lose weight automatically and look awesome because you lost 8 pounds of water. Right? So it's difficult because people are very resistant to change their ideas. And they're very resistant to change their diet. I think it's harder to get someone to change their diet than it is to get someone to add in a 10-minute walk. Especially if you are in a community, if you grew up and your family are in a community where the underlying food groups are not really what we want people to be eating, right? North Carolina, I don't know if it's still true, but my advisor, when I was doing my PhD, came from North Carolina. And she said that in school, tomato ketchup counted as a vegetable. So they could have sausages or burgers and chips and tomato ketchup, and they ate their vegetable for the meal. So they're okay. Right? I spent 5 years in Alabama, and I love fried fish, fried okra, right? Greens and bacon. But you can't be eating that every day. That's the thing. No one says give it up, because that doesn't work. Right? Give it up doesn't work. What you have to do is minimize it. 1 day a week I'm going to have fried okra, fried chicken. The rest of the week I'm not eating that. Or whatever game you want to play with yourself. Like I play my ice cream game. Tonight is ice cream night. Right? I play my ice cream game and I don't eat ice cream the rest of the week. Right, so what's the science behind protein supplementation versus the media advertising, right? If I am doing a lot of resistance training, right? So my goal of my training program is to increase fat-free mass. I want to get more muscle mass and I want to get stronger, right? Then what we see is that prior to my training session, I want to have some protein, but it needs to be mixed with carbohydrate, right? From just before the training program. So again, here's a good time for chocolate milk or a drink, because right before training, within a half an hour of training, I don't want to be eating even peanut butter sandwiches, really, right? And then going to the gym and trying to lift heavy. So that's a good time to think about some other form of supplement, all right? And then up to 3 hours after, 2 hours, 3 hours, depending which resource you're looking at, we want to have some protein with our carbs during our repair phase to increase protein synthesis. Right? The pre-snack works, they think, because it stimulates, well, the training stimulates blood flow, and the snack makes more amino acids available in the blood. And then synthesis is stimulated, so it almost starts while you're training. And so the idea is maybe you don't do as much damage during the training program. I haven't read enough to really know how much support there is for that idea.
Would taking amino acids be the same as calorie step?
I think so, yes. Yeah. Yeah. So, increasing muscle mass takes a long time. Lots of sleep, lots of food, lots of training, no life. That's basically it if you want to increase muscle mass. As I said, I worked in a bodybuilding gym. They sleep about 10 hours a night. And they sleep during the day. And they eat baby food. Well, it was baby food back then. Now it's probably protein bars and amino acid powders and all this clever stuff. But back in the day, it was baby food they used to eat. Because baby food's easy to digest and it's high in protein and carbs. So it was perfect, right? So when we're resistance training and our goal is muscle growth, we've got quite a big window here to try to eat around the training session, okay? If the main goal of the program is endurance, all right, either endurance performance or improving my aerobic capacity and my cardiovascular health, then now the emphasis for the supplementation is slightly different, all right? Because instead of trying to build muscle mass, now we're much more concerned with recovery so that I can do the next training session. Because endurance work does so much damage, actually, right? There's a lot of damage. So here the research says we want not just our carbohydrate, we want our protein and carbs within our 2-hour window after the end of training or the end of the event. And that combination seems to both enhance glycogen resynthesis, so I speed up how quickly I put glycogen back in my pantry, right? And there's some research that suggests that it might reduce muscle damage because you initiate protein synthesis a little bit faster. It's a little equivocal, that stuff. Not all the studies show that same result at the moment. All right, I'm going to skip the written bit there and go straight to the table. So in supplements, again, always get it. Just start getting into the habit. Don't put anything in your mouth unless you know what's in it, right? So if you are using a supplement or if you're buying something that's already cooked or if you're, if you don't produce it and cook it, you should know what's in it. Right? Rule of thumb. So when you look at supplements, they play around with the amino acids. Particularly, those of you that are into supplementation will have heard of these BCCAs, these branched chain amino acids. They're very popular now in the supplements. So what they believe is that the amino acids that are branched chain are the primary stimulators of protein synthesis. So the branched chain is the one that kickstarts the protein synthesis in effect. All right. And the branched chain are leucine, in particular, gets used a lot, isoleucine and valine. Amino acids are in two groups, essential, non-essential. Non-essential means I can make my own version of this if I'm eating a balanced diet. I don't have to necessarily have them in addition to my food or in my food, right? The essential amino acids are essential because I cannot synthesize them. So that means I have to eat them or supplement them, okay? And then, just for kicks, these companies have started playing around with which version of protein they put in the shake or in the powder, all right? So what they found, and again, it's really cool, because in order for them to do this, there had to be a lot of science done to find this out. Right? So you can't get away from the fact that what we do is very science-based. Okay? So what they found was that different types of proteins assimilate and are available as amino acids in different timelines. So we have the most popular kind of protein powder is whey powder. There's also soy powder for people who are not allergic to soy. There's also casein. And what they discovered was that they all have these different timelines. Right? And where's my, let me see my little look here so I can tell you which one is which.
Okay.
268. All right, so protein isolates are these, is the blue line. The red line is whey. Soy is the green line. And casein is the purple line. So what they're starting to do now is mix these proteins within one shake, so that you've got a much longer period of time of additional amino acids available for building muscle. It's really clever. It's really clever. You're a bit stuffed if you're allergic to soy, so you've got to make sure you find one that, you know, as I said, you've got to read the ingredients. Don't take anything that you're not reading. Right? But they're starting to combine them. So now instead of just taking whey, which was very popular for a very long time, but whey only has, what's that, about 100-minute benefit to the person. If I take this combination, now I've got a 3-hour benefit. Right? That's very clever. Very, very clever. At which point, chillblains, we're going to stop on carrots and And on Monday, we will pick up with triglycerides and look at all the fat stuff. So I'm going to give exams back, and then I will scan in and email the exams to the distance students. I'm not quite sure when. It might be Monday because I have to go to another meeting.
Are you still in the conference on the 3rd, on April 3rd or something?
Say that again,
Are
sorry.
you still going to that conference, April 3rd?
The April 3rd is on campus. It's a student research conference. Classes are cancelled for the whole day,
It is?
sadly. Very annoying. But I would highly recommend taking half an hour of your day off to go and watch, either come to the poster presentations in the morning or go to one of the oral presentations in the afternoon, just to see the kinds of research that the students are doing across campus. Because as a program, we're not very good at doing that, because you guys are all so busy with your athletics and your other teams that it's very difficult to recruit you to help with research, right? So I really would take the time to go and have a look at what's going on, because it's a load of fun. There we go. Lawrence is not here. Troy is not here. So people just decide that Friday's a non-school day now? Is that what happens?
That's culture.
That's silly.
They should just be Tuesday, Thursday classes.
Don't take these home, guys, because I have not logged them. There's literally no one here. It's me. Rice. This is out running, this is out running. It's a big sigh.